slow. All right.
All right, bet. You ready?
Yeah, I'm just about ready. Hold on. Yep, ready.
Welcome back to the Chris Massey Show. Today's guest, a reoccurring guest, one of my favorite people. I not only consider you to be a friend, but a mentor. Welcome back, artist Hubert Massey.
It's good being
I'm
here.
still trying to figure out if there's a relation.
Right.
Because that's how we got introduced off of the last names. And,
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
welcome back.
Welcome back to you.
So, man, it's been a while. We've been knowing each other for some years. Man, you have so many dope accomplishments since the last time you were on the show.
Right.
The most recent time we interviewed, I want to say that was around 2016. That's that piece. It's at the south wing of what used to be Cobo Hall.
Yes. I was commissioned to do a large fresco painting. There is 30 feet by 30 feet. I think that's when the last time we met. Actually, because you came to my studio and I was working on a large drawing, and the drawing was about 30 feet by 30 feet. So it was pretty interesting.
So how did that project come about, and what was the theme of it?
So the project came about by because I was being commissioned by they sort of have an art organization that's there at the Cobo Hall, and so they wanted a large installation or a large project. They haven't had a large project for I don't know since the 60s or 70s or so, and so they contacted me about creating a large piece of artwork, and I just I guess they were interested in having a fresco painting. And you know that we have the largest fresco painting in the United States is at the Detroit Institute of Arts Museum by Diego Rivera. So I came in and sat down and had some meetings with them to create this piece, and it was pretty exciting. I think the time when you came in and interviewed me, I was just working on the actual cartoon drawing. And the cartoon drawing is actually a large drawing that's actually full size of the actual fresco painting.
Yeah, and that's super dope. And you mentioned the large mural at the Diego Rivera Courtyard at the DIA. Aren't you affiliated with the Diego Rivera legacy in some capacity?
Yeah, I studied up under his assistants. His assistants taught me how to do the fresco painting.
Nice.
So fresco painting is like thousands. I mean, well, it's hundreds of years old, but it's also thousands of years old. Just the process. And so his assistants came in, and they gave a workshop for 12 artists. I was one of 12, and out of 12, I was the only artist that actually got into doing the fresco.
Nice. So, what's the uniqueness involved with fresco specifically? Because I know you're also one of the few fresco painters in the black ones, to be specific,
in the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
So what's unique about this is that frescoes is nothing but a river sand, lime, marble dust, water, and oxidized pigments. These are all the elements from the earth. So a long time ago, when somebody, say for instance, you were living in a cave and you decided to do a painting, you would take the red dirt, which is oxidized, you mix it with water, and you paint it inside a cave wall. So eventually it lasts for thousands of years. So somebody came up with the idea of taking the pigments or the dirt, the red dirt, adding water to it, and also in the cave is all limestone. So taking a limestone, making it to a powder form, adding water to it, and creating a paste, and then paste it on the wall, and then you add the pigments to it, and you create a fresco painting.
Yeah, that's dope. And so, with your vast skill set, did you always know that you would be an artist by profession, or was it just a hobby at first?
No, I mean, I've been doing art ever since I was 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a athlete. I played sports from 5th grade all the way up through college, you know. And I was a pro prospect in my sophomore year in college. Had great years. I was All-American. And then I ended up suffering a knee operation after my sophomore year, after making all those type of accolades. And I went to Europe, had a scholarship to go to Europe. I studied at the University of London in England.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got through seeing the art, I came back to the States and my whole attitude had changed.
Right.
So all I wanted to do was just do the artwork. And so I dedicated my sort of my life and my discipline to be able to do that type of art. So what I took away from Europe was that artists were just more than just, you know, like some people say I'm a painter or I'm a sculptor or something like that, but they were multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
So they were all dimensional. I mean, Michelangelo designed St. Peter's, but he also did he painted the Sistine Chapel. He did sculpture pieces. He was designing and constructing things, you know, and a lot of artists were like that.
Right.
They were just multidimensional. And when I came back to the States, because in the United States, when people are taught things, they're taught things in separates. You know, that's when you know, when you're in school, you go to the English class, then you go to the math class, then you go to the science class, then you go to the art class, and you go to the gym. Mm-hmm. But holistically, when you look at all the combinations of all these different disciplines, they're all related in a sense because they all cross paths.
Right.
And that's what I took away when I was in Europe.
Yeah, I never honestly looked at it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. And because I think you mentioned to me before about your unique approach to how you follow through with the actual physical manifestation of these projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
like how you could make it like project. You know?
Yeah. Well, so then there's many different levels. One. Remember that movie called Hidden Figures?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the lady was coming up. She was using ancient mathematical equations and stuff to get the right projection to send the Apollo to around the moon or something like that. Mm-hmm. Well, I use the same mathematic formulas. They call it golden means. Some people call it golden ratios and all. Mm-hmm. Egyptians used it. The Greeks used it. So, and what it does, it creates balance and it creates composition. So somebody was asking me, said, so when you paint directly on the wall, and I said, well, really, I don't paint on a wall, I paint in space. Mm-hmm. Because I paint for infinity, not what's concrete there, but what's visually there. So that creates the depth of field and allows you to go basically to infinity because the surface no longer is important. What's important is what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. And you can see as far as the eye can see. And in frescoes, because they don't reflect or shine, they're matte, that it creates this illusion of depth of field and all. And that's what's a beautiful thing about it.
Man, that's super dope. And so was that something that was intuitive, naturally intuitive, or you were kind of taught that? Or a mixture of both?
Well, during the process, because I had the opportunity, I went down to Mexico City to see Sequeiros, mm-hmm. Diego Rivera's, and Orozco's artwork down there. And it was sort of like a pilgrimage. Mm-hmm. A lot of artists went down there. You had Langston Hughes. You had Elizabeth Catlett, who stayed down there. She was a very prominent African-American woman artist. You had Charles White that went down there, and all of them were influenced by a lot of the Mexican mural painters. Mm. And so it was when I went down there and I started seeing the mass production of artwork that's being created by these artists, man. I was just, I came back, I was on fire, man, because I said, wow, because I always wonder how Diego Rivera was painting something on the wall like that at the Detroit Institute of Arts. and yet it should be overwhelming, but it's not. It almost works as a backdrop when you walk up in there. But then until you start looking at it and you start seeing the depth of field that it had, and I said, wow. So anyway, I was reading, and I ran across, he studied up under a guy named J. Hembridge, was a mathematician. And so this mathematician came up using the symmetry. And the symmetry is being able to break up space using lines. So I always tell people, you have a skeleton, right?
Right.
So what if you didn't have a skeleton? Where would you put your heart at? Where would you put your lungs at?
Right.
Where would you put your muscles at? Right? So you need a structure.
Right.
And using the symmetry gives you structure so that you can create compositions. And those compositions create balance. And those balances create sort of an eye-pleasing a way of seeing the world in a totally different direction.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I appreciate the insight. And so different. Fresco is not the only style that you use, correct?
Right.
And so you had a recent project. Was that last year? It was on the street.
Yeah. So there was a group of kids that were interested in having a large painting on the street, like Black Lives Matter in Washington, D.C. So the kids went to the mayor of Detroit and asked, can we have something like this? And so they had a call for artists. So the artists, when they submitted their artwork, there was no name submitted to the students who were looking for the design. They just basically looked at design, right?
Right.
So I think there was like 30 submissions, or people submitting work to the actual process. So I thought that, and I understand Black Lives Matter, but I just thought Detroit is a little more unique. I mean, we already had our '67 uprising. We've been on the cutting edge on so many different things and stuff, and I just thought that power to the people would be more fitting.
Right.
And it was amazing because I had people walk up to me who were, used to be part of the Black Panther,
right. Yeah.
and people saying, "Man, this was," they were saying this was awesome. This is Detroit, because Detroit is kind of unique. We're the largest population of African Americans in the United States. And people say, well, how's that? I said, well, understand this. If it's 700,000 people in the city of Detroit, 80% of people are color. Compton doesn't have that. Harlem doesn't have that. You see what I'm saying? Because those are communities.
Right.
You talk about Atlanta, 80%, it's Detroit. So Detroit has the largest population of African Americans in the United States. And it's only fitting that, we have something that's totally unique because, we got so many firsts here. We got the Queen of Soul here, We had, even though Rosa Parks came up from the South, but she was here. We had Motown. We had some of the major automotive companies here. So I just couldn't, I just had to see, I seen that Detroit should be recognized with its own type of feel.
And that's interesting, and I agree with you. And that's interesting that you mentioned that because that's what we're doing these days. I've been doing this podcast for a while now, and we've been doing it, but now we have more insights of what we've actually been doing,
right?
Which is celebrating each other.
That's right.
It's so many greatness. It's so many great individuals from here because I consider Detroit to be a city of diamonds in the rough.
That's right.
And I adopted that perspective when I came back home as an entrepreneur. And people like, how do you know these people? Because I talk with people. And I get that you don't really know what skill set a lot of people have because we're a working town. So the majority of people you interact with probably got a uniform on, or you see them in their work mode.
Right.
But you don't realize that that's a talented musician, a talented artist, or author, or some type of dope innovator.
Right.
And so that's why we created this platform to get these stories and out here. And it helps on another level.
Right.
I don't know what it was like for you growing up, but you actually had the talent younger. But certain people it's nothing like having an example or something to look at or look up to.
Correct.
And so, and prior to the technological advancements, you pretty much was just around what you knew.
Yeah, just like the. Of course, we have the Charles H. Wright Museum, which is the largest African American museum built and made by African Americans in the United States. And so one of my commissions was I designed the floor at the Charles H. Wright Museum.
Right.
And so it, like I said, Detroit was known for its first. When I came to, I had a choice between Chicago and the city of Detroit, but I wanted to come to Detroit. Originally, I'm from Flint. I grew up and was raised there, but when I went off to school, I was in Grand Rapids. I met an artist by the name of Paul Collins and Randy Brown. And Paul Collins was nationally and internationally known, but he became my mentor, and which was awesome. And he encouraged me in so many different levels. I mean, he had work shown in Japan, Mexico, all over, even in Europe and all. And but he was encouraging me, and it was just great to see an African American who was doing some things. When I first met him, I went to his studio. He had a large painting. He was doing Sojourner Truth mural, and he's being commissioned. And then he was being commissioned to do like 30 other paintings or so, and they were over $300 and something thousand. That was back in the 70s. And I said, and then he was raising a family. I said, that's what I want right there, And he's still in my world to this very day. He's in his 80s now, but
nice.
And he's still doing good. He's still as feisty as ever, and and he was the one that taught me about really getting into the process of really telling our stories, African American stories, and keeping those stories alive. Because we're storytellers. And one of the things I wanted to do is make sure that I tell the truth through my work. So I do community forums to get people to talk about the truths, their history, the community history, and their culture and all. So I can display that in the artwork. So from years down the line, that people can revisit that and say, well, remember where we had this place? Say, for instance, there was a piece on Ferry Street and John R. There was a house bought by Marriott Bethune, and it was called the Women's Negro League. It was all over the United States. Anyway, when she bought this house on Ferry Street, African Americans couldn't walk on Ferry Street. So they said in the clause, we will sell you this house if you remove the front entryway from Ferry Street to John R. So the house is still there. If you drive on Ferry Street, on the corner of Ferry Street and John R., you see this beautiful porch with these pillars, but you see no entryway. You see a porch that looks like it should have stairs, no entryway, but the entryway is on the side, and that's because of that. And those are some of the stories that I discover when I do these community forums, and how it's important to tell our story and tell our history so that we won't forget.
I feel you. And that's very much appreciated and admirable. And before we bring this one to a close, can you actually, because you reminded me when you were telling that story, can you explain the concept of that piece that you have at the Kobo, TCF now? Because it was some things like that in there, like what it represents.
Yeah, so the piece is 30 feet by 30 feet. It's called the Innovation of Technology. I believe that's the right name. So in the piece was described, it shows a person who's holding the world in the hand, and above him is a light that shines on top of the world, and then while he's holding the world, the world is being held in the middle of a gear. So the light that's shining on top of the world is the innovation, but the gear represents the technology. And he happens to be African American.
Right.
That's holding that in the center. So that puts him at the center of innovation and technology. On the on just below his right side, there's 3 women. They're like the Supremes. You know, we just lost one of our queens and stuff. So, but they're like the Supremes but they represent industries like architects, engineers, lawyers, doctors, teachers. They represent that. But it came in 3, so I put 3 down.
Right.
And then Detroit was known for the city of homes. Up above his head, there's patterns that's in the landscape that represents the different cultures that live in the city of Detroit. You know, you have Hispanics. You know, we also have before we even came here, we had Native Americans. There's a lady to the left. She's a Native American, and the garment that was used in the late or mid 18th century here around in the city of Detroit. Did some research on that and put the patterns and stuff together. So that's really a true representation.
Okay.
We also, in the piece, it also talks about Second Baptist Church, where we had the Underground Railroad. So there's this Native American woman. She's pointing the way to Canada. And there's this African American, this slave who's following the lead because a lot of them came here and they went straight to Canada for freedom and all. Then it has Canada, and then it has the Ambassador Bridge. So it's really given a large breadth of the culture of the city of Detroit. And it puts Detroit at, like I said, the center of innovation and technology.
Man, that's super dope, man. And as usual, it's always great working with you and talking with you. What's the best way for people to follow your work and or contact you? Stay updated with.
Yeah, so if they want to contact me, they can reach me at hubert@hubertmasseymurals.net. That's my email. And if they want to go to my website, it's hubertmasseymurals.net.
Okay, perfect. And we appreciate everyone for listening. If you want to stay updated with us, everything is Chris Massey Show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And very special thanks to the official sponsor of the podcast, the inspirational lifestyle brand Legendary. Their motto is believers become innovators, innovators become legendary. They're connecting innovators and dream seekers through apparel and accessories. You can follow them on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at LGNDRE. And you can check out their apparel on their website, lgndre.com. Once again, Hubert, it's always a pleasure, and looking forward to working with you again.
Oh, yeah. It's a pleasure working with you, and it's always good to see another Massey.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.